Sandeep. Good morning. Namo Buddhaya. A warm welcome to the second International Buddhist Media Conclave organized by the International Buddhist Confederation in collaboration with the Vivekananda International Foundation. The theme of this conclave has always been mindful communication for conflict avoidance and sustainable development, focusing on how Buddhist teachings can be assimilated into modern media practices to address global crisis and enhance trust in media institutions. The conclave aims to foster ethical journalism, promote mindful communication, and establish a network of Buddhist media professionals across the globe. In emphasizing the relevance and essence of the connection between Hinduism and Buddhism, which have common origin in the culture of ancient India, the Vivekananda International Foundation and the International Buddhist Confederation came together in 2018 to elucidate on the role of media. This year's edition is aiming to further add to the outcome of the first edition. The cosmic rule of dharma or dhamma in both Hinduism and Buddhism emphasizes ethical conduct. This can indeed play a vital role in creating a standard in today's media's landscape in several ways. Sangha members, dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, the values enshrined in the ancient Indian wisdom are timeless, guiding principles to govern and lead the life of harmonious coexistence. This conclave has crafted 4 pertinent sessions with some excellent panelists across the world who will be deliberating on the application of mindful communication in journalism, helping in conflict avoidance and sustainable development of the society. We look forward to their presentations today. And on that note, I request the following dignitaries to please come and light the lamp and offer flowers to the Lord Buddha. Our keynote speaker, Sri S. Gurumurthy, Chairman VIF. And hosts of today's program, Shatse Kensur Rinpoche Jangchup Shodin, Secretary General of IBC, Dr. Arvind Gupta, Director VIF, Sri Obhijit Haldar, Director General of IBC. May I also request Mr. Ricky Cage and a 3-time award Grammy winner, Indian music composer and environmentalist, our celebrity participant today to please join them. We shall now invoke Lord Buddha amidst us through Mangala Charan. May I please request venerable monks for the Buddhist chanting.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Iti piso bhagavato samma sambuddho vijacarana sampanno sugato lokavido anuttaro purisa namasarati satta deva manussanam buddho bhagavati swakato bhagavata namo sanditiko akaliko Ipasiko panaiko pacatam vedikabdo vinyoheti Supatipanno bhagavato savaka sangho Ujupatipanno bhagavato savaka sangho Yaya patipanno bhagavato savaka sangho Samici patipanno bhagavato savaka sangho Yadidam cattari purisa yugani Atha purisa puggala Esa bhagavato savaka sangho Pauneyo pauneyo dakhineyo anjali karaniyo anottaran punya ketang lokasati Iwang buddhang saranang dhammang saranang sabhikkhave bayang wa cambukatang wa loma sangho nahissati Mahakaruniko nato hitaya sabbapaninang purito parami sabbapato sambodhi muttamang jayanto bodhiya mule sakyanang nadi bhajano iwanto yang jayo hotu jayasu jayamangal Bhavatu sabba mangalang rakhantu sabba devata sabba buddhanubhavena sada soti bhavantu te Bhavatu sabba mangalang rakhantu sabba devata sabba dhammanubhavena sada soti bhavantu te Bhavatu sabba mangalang rakhantu sabba devata sabba sanghanubhavena Sada soti bhavantu te. Sadhu, may all beings be happy.
I now request Secretary General of IBC, Shatsik Khensur Rinpoche Jangchup Shodin, to please come on stage and present memento and khatak from IBC to our keynote speaker, Shri S. Gurumurthy, Chairman VIF. I request Rinpoche to please welcome our guest of honor, Sri Baichung Bhutia, former captain of the Indian national football team. Along with a memento and khatak from IBC, our guest of honor is being presented a token of appreciation from the Vivekananda International Foundation. May I request Dr. Arvind Gupta and Sri Obhijit Halgar to please join the dignitaries on the dais. I now request Director of VIF, Dr. Arvind Gupta, to please deliver the welcome address.
Namaskar. Good morning to everyone. Rinpoche, Jongchup Chodan, Secretary General IBC, Shri Gurumurthy Ji, Shri Bhaichung Bhutia Ji, Shri Avijit Haldar, Director General IBC. Mr. We have amongst us very distinguished Mr. Cage, who was the Grammy Award winner and has done a great proud to India. Mr. Cage, distinguished speakers, guests, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to welcome you all to the second edition of this Buddhist Media Conclave at the VIF. The Vivekananda International Foundation is delighted to join hands with International Buddhist Confederation to hold this second international conclave. The topic is mindful communication for conflict avoidance and sustainable development. This is something which is known to you all because the first conclave was held in this very hall in 2018 on the same very theme. It brought together at that time 150 delegates from 12 different countries, and several useful recommendations emerged in that meeting. And today we have, I think, a larger and more international gathering. And I want to thank the IBC for organizing this wonderful event. Friends, the role of media in promoting the values of mindful communication, which should help resolving the major issues of our time, was discussed at that time, and hopefully we will have an intense, in-depth discussion this time as well. In the last 6 years since we held the first meeting, the world has changed quite significantly and dramatically. Geopolitical tensions have increased considerably. Humanitarian crisis has deepened. Terrorism and radicalization continue to pose serious threat to societies, nations, and international security. COVID-19 crisis in 2021 resulted in tens of millions of deaths and human suffering at an unprecedented scale. One would have thought that nations would learn appropriate lessons from the pandemic. Unfortunately, that is not the case. Instead, we are seeing two major wars in the world which have claimed hundreds of thousands of lives already and created humanitarian crisis impacting millions of people. And there is no end to sight to these wars. The risk of a larger conflagration involving multiple countries has increased. Nuclear arms control arrangements are non-functional or dysfunctional. Global economic situation is highly uncertain. And on top of these geopolitical conflicts and tensions, the world is witnessing the tightening grip of climate change, extreme weather events, environmental degradation, and loss of biodiversity. Autonomous weapon systems driven by new technologies threaten to make humans redundant in decision making. Technology-enabled new age crimes are threatening to get out of control. This is evident in an exponential rise in cybercrimes, drug trafficking, and environmental crimes. It is clear that we need fresh thinking and new approaches to dealing with these problems at a time when the world is transitioning from unipolarity to multipolarity. India is conscious of this. Going back to its civilizational character, India chose Vasudev Kutumbakam, one earth, one family, one future, as the theme of the G20 under its presidency. Vasudev Kutumbakam is a framework for global cooperation and harmony which has been disturbed rudely. In concrete terms, India sought to bring as many countries as possible on the international high table by getting the African Union into the G20 and by giving strength to the voice of countries of the Global South. India has also been active promoter of International Solar Alliance, the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, the Big Cat Alliance, and other international initiatives. These initiatives give practical shape to the concept of Vasudev Kutumbakam, humane globalization, and reformed multilateralism. Harmony in thought and action is important to restore the lost equilibrium. In this context, in 2015, Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Abe of Japan had launched the Hindu-Buddhist Samvad. 3 major meetings and several conferences have been held already. Hindu and Buddhist scholars have had the opportunity to discuss contemporary issues and give their suggestions. The concept of dharma or dhamma is central to Hindu and Buddhist thinking. Buddhism lays stress on the principles of ethical conduct, enlightenment, and about the nature of suffering. Swami Vivekananda regarded Indian vision of life as that of spiritual oneness of the whole universe. In the Indian prayers, there is a longing for peace and happiness for all, Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina. These ideas must be discussed and disseminated more widely by the media. The extreme form of materialism, attachment, and realism advocated by Western thinking is the source of many problems. Man's dominance over nature is central to Western thought. Alternate ideas are needed. Hinduism and Buddhism, with their rich philosophy and vision, can provide these ideas. The media has to play a positive role in spreading the basic tenets of Hinduism and Buddhism: oneness, moral conduct, compassion, non-attachment, etc. Today's media, dominated by social media, has immense potentialities, both positive and negative. Instead of resorting to sensationalism, misinformation, and spreading negativity and hopelessness, the media needs to focus on encouraging mindfulness, balanced and ethical reporting, while highlighting positive values and inspiring role models. And several of role models are here in this hall today. We hope that the second conclave will throw up useful suggestions as to how the media can play a positive role in spreading the values of dharma and dhamma propounded by the great religions of Hinduism and Buddhism. The various segments of the conference will deal with these issues. With those words, I want to welcome you all and thank you very much for patiently.
Thank you, sir. We will now be having the inaugural address by the Secretary General of IBC, Shatsik and Sur Rinpoche, Jamsuk Shabal.
Namo Buddhaya. Anirodham, Anutpadam, Anuchedam, Ashashvatam, Anekartham, Nanartham, Nagamam, Nirgamam. Ya Pratitya Samutpadam, Prapancho Pashmum Shivam, Veshyamasa Sambudastam, Vande Vadatam Varam. Kangi Dinjin Deverjum Gaba Meva Game, Cheva Meva, Tameva, Homa Meva, Drome. Ade Tumin, Tunji, Mituban Yashi Shidi, Zobe, Sangi Manum Kitsambatella Chas. With paying homage to great teacher of devas and humans, the great Buddha Shakyamuni, I feel humbled to say a few words in this August gathering and very special occasion of the second International Buddhist Media Conclave happening in this wonderful place of Vivekananda International Foundation. First of all, I would like to express my thanks and at the same time welcome to our chief guest, Mr. S. Gurumurthy ji, who I know from a long time. He's a wonderful orator and kind of speaker. And I would also like to welcome well-known and famous Mr. Paichu Bhutia to be our guest here. I used to hear about him a lot, but this is first personal meeting. So it's very interesting to see you here. And then, of course, I do have Dr. Arvind Gupta ji, the director of this foundation, and my colleague, Mr. Abhijit Haldarji, the Director General of IBC, and all the dignitaries from the diplomatic corps in this country, those are joining us, and dignitaries from different parts of the world. So far, according to my knowledge, we have at least participation from 18 countries with speakers participating from 14 different countries. So this is a kind of a sizable international gathering. And on this occasion, particularly on the issue of mindful communication and conflict avoidance and sustainable development, all these issues are very, very pressing issues in today's world. We see a lot of conflict happening here and there. It appears like due to the kind of a lot of conflicts, those are happening kind of very deeply enhanced weapon race has been triggered. This is a very, very kind of a serious matter for entire humanity. So from that point of view, conflict avoidance and conflict resolution is very pressing issue that we must kind of ponder on And we must have a kind of more discussion and try to find out a way, how to handle it and how to deal with it. Of course, mindful communication is another issue. Like, I've been listening to some historians, famous historians, who was saying that human beings are run by narratives and stories. Up to this point, we are running some kind of a particular type of story, but we need to change the stories. Unless we change the stories and narratives, we may not be able to kind of resolve a lot of issues. So here, when it comes to changing the stories, creating a new narrative, mindful communication and the media community has a very crucial and important role to play. So here I would like to remind you that Buddha has advised his Bhikkhu Sangha that whenever they select a person for certain kind of duties in the Sangha community, the most important qualities they should be looking for is a person who is not driven by 4 kind of negative emotions. Those are, aspirational kind of greed. If a person is driven by aspirational greed, then there are a lot of chances that that person will do a lot of wrong things, unjust things. Then the second thing is a person not driven by hatred and jealousy. That is another important thing that we need to think about. And the third thing is a person must not be driven by fear. If a person is driven by fear, they tend to be ending up in doing a lot of wrong things. And finally, a person not driven by ignorance, lack of knowledge, taking decision under the lack of knowledge, taking decision under the pressure of fear, taking decision under the kind of pressure of hatred and jealousy, and taking decision driven by aspirational greed. These are the very common things that Buddha told very clearly to his Sangha bhikkhus, that whenever you choose someone, you have to kind of look for these qualities. And then, particularly in mass communication, where in today's world, communication is moving so fast, it is so kind of, influential. We must be driven by kind of truthfulness and speak sweet and soothing words. And at the end, we must be driven by compassion and altruism. These are the kind of teachings of the Buddha and guidance of the Buddha to his Sangha, and which is relevant to today's world. Not just relevant, it is so crucially needed. We must think about that. Unfortunately, the world is so deeply delved into material greed. Sometimes it appears like it's hopeless, but we cannot give up. We have to stand for. We have to struggle. We have to move forward. Definitely there will be some changes that will come up. So these are very, very important things that we need to look into. And then these are also applicable equally applicable to the sustainable development. If we live with these values, if we do the things with these values, if we choose people to be in these professions with these values, then that will help us a lot to achieve the pressing issues, to kind of address the pressing issues, to achieve our goal. So, with kind of saying that, I don't like to take much of time from other speakers. We have a lot of valuable and kind of expert speakers here. So, with that note, I would like to conclude here. So, I wish a very fruitful and comprehensive discussion throughout the kind of this media conclave, and hopefully there will be something wonderful that will come out that could be applicable to the entire humanity and make a contribution for a better future, for common future for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Venerable. Our guest of honor today is former captain of the Indian team. His international footballing honors include winning the Nehru Cup, LG Cup, South Asian Football Federation Championship thrice, and the Asian Football Championship Challenge Cup. A Buddhist hailing from Sikkim, he is considered to be the torchbearer of Indian football in the international arena. He is also India's most capped player with 104 international caps to his name. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Mr. Baichung Bhutia. Sir, may I please ask you to share a few words with the gathering?
Kuduzampu, Tashidilek, Namaskar. In fact, it's a great honor to be here speaking in Buddhist Media Conclave 2024. I'm sure, I think during this conclave, you'll hear a lot of experts from learned experts here, but I'm going to share my experience as a Buddhist. You know, I was born Buddhist in a small village in Sikkim called Tinkita. So my village was very remote, so my parents obviously put me into boarding school from a very young age. And every time during our vacations, because winters used to be very cold and we had longer winter vacations in Sikkim, every time I returned back from winter vacation, the first thing in the house was my parents were a very religious Buddhist followers. So every time me and my siblings returned, the first thing in my village was my parents calling the monks and doing prayers for us safe return. At the same time, putting prayer flags for us and also praying for the entire village to be safe. And that is what I grew up as my childhood, I've grown up into a Buddhist culture. But at the age of 17, I left Sikkim and I started playing professional football in Calcutta with East Bengal. So I left Sikkim at the age of 17, went on to be there for 17 years, and then went to England for 3 years to play. So even in my footballing career, I think Buddhism has really helped me a lot because it taught me how to be patient. It taught me how to be, stay calm. Obviously, when you start playing a sport like football, which is a very physical impact sport, and the teaching of Buddhism is totally different when you start playing sports because it's all about win, defeat, and you want to win and just win everything. But everything does not happen all the time. So when you lose as well, I think being calm and at the same time, whenever you win, respecting your opponents was very, very important because when you win matches, when you become successful in any individual or team sports, I think it's because of the opponents as well. So the respect for opponents and respect for the fans and the referees was very, very important. That came into Buddhist teaching. And I'm sure, I think with Buddhist media conclave today, we're trying to see that how media can be a bigger influence to teach Buddhism. And I'm not the expert in Buddhism, but I've lived outside, as I said, I've lived outside Sikkim for almost 20 years. I've come back to Sikkim now, and I've again started doing my dharma quite seriously. I've gone recently to Nepal for 10 days with a guru there, and I stayed there learning Buddhism again, because once I started playing, it was all football. That become my religion. So I'm getting back into it, into that. If you even look at the Buddhism and Buddhist history, even Lord Buddha as well, I think sacrificed everything, just thrown to become this ordinary person. And if you look at our history again, Buddhists and Buddhism has suffered a lot. I'm not the expert again, as I said, if you look into the Mughals, when they came in, I think Nalanda was destroyed so much that a lot of priests were, murdered and killed, and a lot of script and Buddhism had to be taken to Tibet for its safeguard. Even in Tibet as well, I think when the Chinese came in, there were a lot of script and Buddhism that got destroyed. So I think if you look at the Buddhist history itself, I think there's been a lot of, which has been, unfortunately, for the Buddhists, has been quite difficult in terms of history as well. And I think it's the only religion where every other religion might say ours is the best, but Buddhism is about way of life. And if you look at Buddha's teaching to his life, I think it's all about being peaceful and sacrifices. And today I'm a big follower of His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. I think he's one of the biggest examples in the world who's a true leader of peace and non-violence. And Buddhism and Lord Buddha also was that. And when today, I think Rinpoche was just saying about the greed which has come across the leaders, across the nations, and the wars are happening. It's all coming down to greed and being powerful and controlling everything from power to economics to everything. I think that's where Buddhism plays a big major role to bring peace, sacrifices, and brotherhood and non-violence. And I think that's where the media has a big role to play to spread Buddhism across, just not in the Himalayan region or Buddhist countries, but across the world. I think Buddhism is one religion that can bring peace, that can teach about giving sacrifices and being that brotherhood, bringing peace to an entire nation. Yes, every nation has to grow economically or anyway, but I think at the end, it's also to make sure that it has to be peacefully done. It has to be sustainable done. Today's, I think, also is about sustainable development. And I've been one of the biggest vocal in terms of sustainable development. I've seen my own state, Sikkim, how it has changed over the years, I think because of development. I think tourism is hit big time today. We are seeing across the world, a lot of cities are, I think, banning tourists to come into because it's become so commercial, the originality has been lost. And it's only getting concrete without really being sustainable. And today I feel sad that my state might get into that because Sikkim is again one of the big tourist destinations. But if you look at Sikkim, what it was 30 years ago, and now the culture is lost. So we're losing out our culture, which was Buddhism, Hinduism there. But now it's only about development, about money, about tourism, and then you've got concretes coming all over. 30 years when I was a kid, Gangtok as a town was small town with gaps in between to let that gap small. There was no construction at all. There was gaps between so that if Sikkim, a place where it's a seismic zone, earthquake-prone area, when you have any major earthquake, those gaps in the shops or the buildings would allow it for the safeguard. But today, if you look at it, it's because of the development. I think without any sustainable development, I think it's getting crazy. So I think the media has to play a big role in spreading Buddhism and also spreading sustainable development, which is the topic for today. And I'm sure everybody who's come here today will get to hear a lot of interesting insight from experts here, and I'm looking forward to it. But again, one more time, I would like to say thank you for having me here, and let's spread peace, let's spread brotherhood, and let's make sure that our country and our nation and the world is at peace. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Mr. Bhutia. As part of its mandate, the International Buddhist Confederation has been facilitating in taking the holy relics of Lord Buddha to Buddhist countries. This year, with the support of Ministry of Culture and the Indian Embassy in Bangkok, the holy relics of Lord Buddha, along with those of his two disciples, Arahat Sariputta and Arahat Moglana, were taken to Thailand and showcased at 4 cities as part of a 26-day exposition, marking a profound spiritual pilgrimage. Over 4 million devotees paid obeisance to the holy relics in Thailand. IBC is proud to present a short film showcasing its experience of taking the holy relics to Thailand. May I now request well-known journalist and chairman of Vivekananda International Foundation, Sri Swaminathan Gurumurthy, sir, to please deliver the keynote address.
I am delighted to stand before all of you, a very distinguished and a difficult to gather audience. It is very difficult to gather an audience of this type, but it is very easy to get a speaker of my type. So I first bow to this audience, which have come from 20 countries, 47 delegates, who have a common aim. It's not just a collection of individuals with diverse thoughts. This audience is converged on a thought. That is the most important thing, which makes me feel humble to stand before you. Jangchup Chodan, the Secretary General of the IBC, Mr. Bechung Bhutia, whom I have admired from a distance, and his skillful play, and I am very pleased and proud to sit by his side today. And Abhijit Halder, Director General of the IPC, and Mr. Arvind Gupta, my colleague in the Vivekananda International Foundation. So as a community, I was introduced as a journalist. Of course, this is one of the facets of my life, a very risky and difficult phase of my life over 25 years. But as a communicator, because the theme of this whole meet is communication. Communication is both a science and an art. As a communicator, I would like to make 4 points before I get into the other aspects I would like to place before you. I like the word mindful communication because we are suffering from mindless communication all over. So the greatest damage has been done in the last few hundred years to the world, to our civilization, our faith, our lifestyle, our habits, and the whole lot of perversions and distortions which we see in the whole world, which makes us feel, all of us are worried. And it is the convergence of worried people which makes the idea of strength. If all of us are worried individually, we will be weak. If all worried people come together, that is strength. That is what the IBC is doing. Bring all the people who are worried about what is happening to the world, to all of us, to our families, to our neighborhood. So this is an organization which brings together worried people to create strength out of their worries. So the most important thing all of us should contemplate is how to communicate. So first we must understand there is mindless communication going on, which is creating all the problems that make us feel worried. Because truth is the casualty of mindless communication, and truth is the foundation of mindful communication. Second, content is the soul, and expression is the body of the communication. We must have the content creation. And content is always based on the text. We move away from the text because the context and the text are conflicting. In the current context, the text seems to be too abstract, too confusing, too difficult even to own and express. For example, we had the prayer. This would normally not accepted in a contemporary modern setting because we are disconnected from that. But that builds the ecosystem for all of us. In a manner unknown, it's an abstract influence. So we must have the capacity to bring together the text and the context. Without context, the text has no value. Without the articulation suitable to a particular context, the text is useless. So, context, as a writer, I have always, when I have always explained an abstract concept, I have always proceeded from a concrete context. In a concrete context only, you can express an abstract text. So, that is where, in a way, a journalist like me succeeded in creating a national situation which led to changes of the government also. So this communication model of text and the context being aligned is very important. Third is, narrative is the product of the mix of the text and the context. So the narrative that should suit the context and unveil the text in the current context is the most important thing. I thought, as someone who has been involved in journalism for 25 years, I would share these fundamental rules. Now, coming to what are our problems? What are the worries that we have in our mind? How do we handle the contemporary world, which has multiplied its complexities and keeps multiplying every day by technology, by politics, by ambitions, by the kind of things all of us disagree with and which have become current and almost inevitable. So, both the Secretary General IBC and also Dr. Arvind Gupta spoke about the conflicts we face. And unless we go into the root of this, and the root is not something which is abstract, it is real. That's what I am going to tell you. One, Bharat is the source of all greatest philosophies. I want to emphasize the word philosophies. Because Because there is a huge distinction between philosophy and ideology. All the thoughts that emanated from Bharat are philosophies. Philosophy means, I think it is right. Maybe you also have a viewpoint. This is philosophy. The ideology is, I am right and you are wrong. This I am right, you are wrong has produced all the conflicts in the world. It has gone to the extent of saying, my God is right, your God is wrong. As Swami Vivekananda said, whether your God is right or my God is right, let us have a boxing match and decide. This extended to wars. This is extended to terrorism. Well, India has been able to avoid this. You must all read a highly researched website called Power Kills by Professor R.J. Ramal of Hawaii University. He did a research for 30 years to find out how human beings, mass-killed human beings all over the world for the last 2,500 years, and found that till the 13th century, there was no mass killing in India. Whereas in the rest of the world, in the last 2,500 years, more than 1.2 billion people have been massacred. What is the secret that in this geography, there was no mass killing? It is because we believed that maybe the other viewpoint is also right. We never thought, I am right, you are wrong. This I am right, you are wrong is the ideological world in which we live. And the person who made a distinction between philosophy and ideology was not a philosopher. He was a politician. His name was Bill Clinton. I was myself surprised how Bill Clinton hinted the idea of the distinction between ideology and philosophy. He spoke this in 2007 in a meeting. And that so perfectly fitted the two paradigms that operate in the world, about which I will come to it a little later. But going back to what Dr. Arvind Gupta said, in the year 2015, we started the Samvad. In the Samvad, the two themes were conflict, avoidance, and environmental consciousness. We carefully chose the idea of conflict avoidance because the entire world is now working on conflict resolution. Because you have created conflicts, you have to resolve it. But our idea is to avoid conflicts. That is why we have been able to avoid mass killings. Because every human being is born with ego, with lust, with all the drives which make him conflict. So the only way of making a human being not have conflict is to have a larger philosophy. Every human being anywhere is the same person. He has the same desire, he has the same hate, he has the same. But it is the philosophy which moderates him, which gives him a higher idea of life and makes him feel maybe the other man has a viewpoint, it may be wrong from your perspective, but it may also be right. You see, this one theme that the other view may also be right has saved India from mass killing. This came from a politician in America, to my surprise. And philosophy is not, and environmental consciousness and philosophy are interlinked. What is environmental consciousness? Of course, the Scandinavian ecologists have talked about deep ecological consciousness. Consciousness itself means that you transcend what you see as the contemporary world, about which I will come to you a little later. But the fact is, consciousness relates you to the entire creation. It's not just between two human beings or two countries or two societies or two faiths. You relate to nature, you relate to tree, you relate to the mountains, you relate to the entire outer space. You feel you are part of all this. And this is philosophy. And the entire Eastern philosophies are converged on it. In fact, this we had brought out in the Samvad as a long paper of 150 pages. in which I had summarized how the Eastern philosophies sourced the text are relevant in the modern context, and our communication must use it how it can be used as the basis of scientific communication, I would like to reveal. You see, here are some illustrations of the ancient civilizations. Isavasya Upanishad say, which is one of the most ancient Hindu scriptures, says, Isavasyam idam sarvam yatkintyat jagatyam chakad tena tektena punjidaha magala kasya siddhanam. It means, Mahatma Gandhi translates it. In creation, the divine is immanent in earth, water, air, fire, and in every tiniest atom of this universe. Divine is immanent everywhere. This is the idea of Isavasya Upanishad. Now come to Kalachakra Tantra, the Buddhist scripture. Earth, water, air, fire, human beings, all emerged out of the vacuum of space. What is the difference between Advaita and Buddhism? Buddhism said it all came out of a vacuum. Shankara said that vacuum is yourself. Tat Tvam Asi. It is you. You are part of that vacuum. You are not independent of that vacuum. All that emerged out of the vacuum is part of the vacuum. So that is why Shankara was called Prachanda Buddha by the Vaishnavites, who said he is a Buddhist in concealed form. So the idea is one, narrative is different. Third, Achara Shustra, the Jain text says, the four elements, earth, water, fire, air, are animated by souls. Particles of earth are the bodies of elementary soul called the earth life. Then come to Guru Granth Sahib, the sixth scripture. The five elements of earth, water, air, fire, space are all living beings. Oh God, it is only you. There is no God independent of the entire creation of which the God is supposed to be the manifester. There is no God who created something. God manifested. This is the Eastern philosophy. Now you go to Taichung Wado Dushi Zinkian, the Taoist scripture states that Tao is the mother of heaven and earth, of yin and yang, of the origin of five agents and of myriad beings. Man and all other beings are born from the same primordial breath. Key. So that all beings emanate from the Tao and obtain their essence from Tao. Then Kojiki, the Shinto scripture, regards the land, its nature, all the creatures, including human as children, Kami, the divine, and therefore exists the Kami of rain, the Kami of wind, the Kami of mountain, the Kami of ocean, the Kami of river, and the Kami of thunder. These Eastern philosophies link the practical human life to the idea of creation. This is the most important aspect in the contemporary communication, and I will take you to where the world is today and how our communication must fit that. The Prime Minister of India, in his G20 motto, said that one earth, one family, one future. In fact, I had a discussion with the Prime Minister on this. And I asked him, is it not too abstract? Even it is a Vedantic concept. Even Indian education system has moved the Indians away from this. How do you expect the foreign minds, political minds, and G20 leaders to understand this complex concept? It is not complex, it is as simple, but we have moved away from this. We have alienated ourselves. We are foreigners. This has become a foreign thought. So as a result, he asked me to deliver a lecture in Niti Ayog, in which I gave just a few figures. It's a revealing thing, it's an obvious thing, it is a Newtonian falling apples. Just like nobody asked a question why apples are falling, we never ask why these facts exist. India is a place with 2.4% of the world's land area. It has 18% of world's population, human population. It has 30% of world's bovine population. It has 40% of world's cattle population. It has 8% of world's bioresources. How does this ecological wonder function? It's a wonder. America, which is 3.5 times size as India, has 1/6 of the bovine population of India. China, in the same way. But in India, why we are able to coexist? Because our civilization rests on cereal eating as the main and meat eating as a subject. You know, meat gives you only 17% of the calorie value. Cereals give you 83% of the calorie value. And cereals give you 67% of the protein, and 37% is only from meat. If, for example, if this cereal meat mix is not there, and we all shift to, say, the American way of eating, I made a calculation that we will need 6 times the agricultural land India has. Tell me, this whole thing, did it take place by accident? This is a macro figure which has a micro functioning philosophic approach. For example, India did not have food in the 1960s and 70s, but the cattle population kept increasing, it did not come down. Our average meat consumption is 3.1 kg per head per annum. It is 125 in America, as much in Europe, 180 kilos in South Africa. And China and Japan, which were consuming meat as much as we were consuming in 1950s, have gone up 10 times today. You know what is the effect on environment? The difference between cereal eating and meat eating is 10 to 100 times this is the contribution of CO2 gas emission in meat. You understand what Buddhism and Hinduism has done to India? And at least a dozen ecologists have said the West is heating up the world. India is the only place which is cooling it down. All this is related to a continuum of philosophy which gives you the goal of life. And from goal of life, you get the lifestyle. From lifestyle, you get the habits. From habits, the habits decide what you want and don't want, and that decides what is to be produced and consumed. That's why there is a huge difference between the consumption pattern in India and the consumption pattern elsewhere. There is a continuum of the philosophic link to the day-to-day habit. And if you disturb the philosophy, everything gets disturbed. This is what the Prime Minister emphasized by lifestyle. And now I will come to where the world is and how we should communicate. You know, we are living in the Newtonian world. You think that everything is what we see is only true. The existential world is the only truth. And there is no truth beyond that, was the conception of Newton. And that produced unbelievable discoveries. We were arrested by the discoveries. Till quantum science came. It said, gentlemen, what you see as solid is not solid. What you see as liquid is not liquid. What you see as the world is not the world. What you see as sun is not the sun. It's all collection of atoms moving in a regular fashion. The rhythmatic movement of the atom makes all this appear as this. So somewhere coming near what we said, this world is only an appearance. Then it goes further. Einstein said, if you want to find out what existed before all this, you have to move faster than light back. Stephen Hawking didn't agree with that. He said, no, I will find out what happened before that. And he came out with mathematically valid, Big Bang theory that 1/1,000,000th of an atom developed such a heat and exploded that it produced heat and energy equal to trillions of megatons of atom bomb that kept expanding. And that is the universe you see. That is you, me, this table, this all, VIF. And when the energy goes back, cools down, it will go to that 1/1,000,000th of an atom and perish. This is the theory. When it will happen trillions and trillions of years away, but theoretically that is the correct thing. Then said, what was existing before that 1/1,000,000th of an atom became the inquiry? Many scientists said there is answer only in the Indian philosophy. There is no other answer. Whether it is Heisenberg or Schrödinger, there are 7 Nobel laureates who said that the Indian idea of creation, that matter came out of consciousness, is the only answer. In 2020, the Nobel Prize was given to one Roger Penrose, who worked with Stephen Hawking for 20 years. That there was a pre-existing consciousness which cannot be brought into mathematical calculation, from which energy and matter came. That is the 2020 Nobel Prize. I spoke this in IIT Bombay. Most of the students were unaware that this pre-existing consciousness from out of which matter came is part of the Indian philosophy. Our communication has to be scientific. It has to relate the 2020 Nobel Prize to Kalachakra Tattva. It has to relate to the Ishavasya Upanishad. So the text and the context must link, and our articulation must make the modern, or of course I have great objection to the word modernity itself, because modernity lacks reverence. Reverence is the foundation of human life. In fact, Carl Sagan, if you have time, just witness the 2.5-minute video where he said a pale blue dot. He said you look at the universe and see the world. It's just a pale blue dot. That's why all of us quarrel, kill each other. 1.2 billion people were killed in 2,500 years. He said this is a small, tiny dot. And so he said, if you want to have humility, you must have astronomy as part of universal education. So you understand how small you are. So humility is the foundation of reverence. Reverence is the foundation of philosophy. Ideology negates everything. Unless we understand the larger philosophic, ideological, sociological, political, and religious, I wouldn't really say the word religious, because religion is a word which has come from outside, which we have to use. It is not religious. The dharmic basis of our life. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your insights. I now request Shri Obijit Haldar, Director General of IBC, to propose the concluding remarks of this session.
Good morning to all of you here, and Namo Buddhaya. Most respected Sri Gurumurthy Ji, Chairman of the Vivekananda International Foundation. Sir, thank you for an excellent presentation. It really brought out elements of metaphysics and communication all together. Most esteemed Venerable Jamshid Choudhury Ji, Secretary General of IBC, Dr. Arvind Gupta, Director of the VIF, our most honored guest here, Baichung Bhutia Ji. In fact, India is a country of cricketers. So if I ask you to take names of cricket players, I'm sure you'll, get overwhelmed and you'll come out with 10 names. If I ask you to come up with names of footballers in India, you'll go blank. But this man And Baching Bhutia, his name has always stood tall. We've all grown up with this name. Thank you very much, Bachung ji, to be here. And of course, Ricky Cage, three-time Grammy Awards winner, a music composer and an environmentalist, a youngster who has the passion to contribute as much as possible to the welfare of humankind and nature. Thank you very much. We also have among us, as Sri Gurumurthy has mentioned, the number of representatives from different countries. We have also representatives from various media houses from Buddhist countries. We have representatives from the office of the President and Prime Minister of a few countries who are present here, people who look after the media, and of course, a lot of distinguished members from the media and communication fraternity from India. The diplomatic corps, people who have always supported us, young scholars, young academicians, and the journalists who are covering this event. At the outset, I must mention that this is an event which is going to be distinctively different from any other such event, as here we are going to delve into certain values and principles of ancient Indian wisdom as ingrained in Hindu and Buddhist philosophy. And we're going to look at various aspects of mankind and survival. As you see, the topic is all about sustainable development and avoiding conflict. These are the two issues which have been really bothering the world today. Everybody's spoken about this. Conflict need not be really the major conflicts which we look at, the conflict between Russia and Ukraine or the Gaza conflict, etc. But conflict also involves socio-economic problems, ethnic strife. You look at sub-Saharan Africa, you look at situations in Latin America, look at situations in South Asia. There are several conflicts going on all across. And we are all responsible, the media and the communication domain, to contribute in any way possible to assuage the concerns of these affected communities. Here, I would like to mention about what Venerable Jamchik Chodan mentioned, the mind. The Buddha always spoke about the human mind. His essential emphasis was on the human mind, the clarity of mind, the mind which is free of any external influence. Now, in this age of communication where we exist today, with all the tools which are around us, the software tools, the social media, the internet, the digital media, we all know at the deluge of information that we face from morning to evening, coming from all these channels, tends to cloud our minds and blur our image, our impression about the world around us. And therefore, it's very difficult and challenging to really ward off any influence which is affecting the mind. And we have, for the endless number of years as human beings, we've been trying to influence the minds of each other. This is a game we've all been into, as Guru Murthy mentioned, that the mind game has been going on among us human beings. In fact, in the last century, it's very interesting. In the last century, I have colleagues here from different countries, but without any bias. When the US was confronted with the situation where they had to deal with World War II and the Vietnam War, there was a need to develop a mind-influencing technology, a mechanism. So they coined the term PsyOps, psychological operations. According to the US Defense Department or the Department of Defense, the coinage, cyber ops or PsyOps, basically means the ability to build a narrative, well-crafted narrative, targeting a foreign audience in a manner that impacts the emotions, the motives of that foreign audience to your benefit. Now, this is something which is done in national security interest. And this has happened. This is something which happened, in 20th century, early 20th century, when you had the radio and the newspaper. The television also followed subsequently. But now in the new age media, everybody is into this game of mind influencing. Every country is into it. Players such as the corporate sector, individuals like you and me, we are just pushing narratives, freewheeling narratives in the international media domain. Corporate houses are trying to sideline their rivals' products and trying to push their narrative. The game is absolutely endless. The unfortunate thing is, if you look at the media domain, there's a lot of negative force which is floating around. Negativity
has a lot of traction. According to the WHO, they did a research and they found that negative news or misinformation grabs traction 70% faster than original, genuine information. So that's it. We are human beings. We have a human mind. We have a tendency to grab something negative, unfortunately. And this is where media and communication comes in big time. When you come to conflict resolution or conflict avoidance is a very tough subject. An example which I would like to quote, which I was referring to someone yesterday also, about Buddha's study of conflict. And he gives a very simple example. He talks about a mountain which has two villages on two sides. The village on the eastern side of the mountain, from where the sun rises, they refer to the mountain as the Eastern Hill. They call it the Eastern Hill. The village on the western side of the mountain refers to the mountain as the Western Mountain. And villages in both these villages for years and for centuries have referred to the mountain as the Eastern Mountain or the Western Mountain, because their fathers, their forefathers have got tales on these mountains, but they've been referred to as Western or Eastern. Now, this is where, as Sri Gurumurti was saying, extreme points of view, extreme contradictory points of view tend to lead to conflicting situation. The cause of conflict is differing views. You cannot make either side understand that the other guy is right. So this is where Buddha goes for the middle path, looking at the whole issue from a third perspective. So you got to pull the villagers out, or at least leaders or heads of the villages out to a neutral position, from where they are made to understand why is it that he's calling the mountain as the Eastern Mountain, why is it that I'm calling it the Western Mountain. And over a period of time, you come to a mutual understanding. But then Buddha again says, this whole process has to be done in a very mindful manner. At the second stage, we being humans, there are these negative tendencies which come up. Ego, greed, craving, clinging, arrogance, all of this has been described by the Buddha in detail. And when these factors come in, you are midway through the negotiation, but then you halt. Again, a second process of mindfulness is needed to be ingrained in the minds of both the sides. And then in the third stage, hopefully, you do come to a particular situation, a middle path of understanding. And while doing the entire process, he says that you have to completely shed all the inhibitions that you have acquired while you were in the eastern side or the western side of the mountain. Forget about the tales, forget about the demands of the people of that area. Just come out of that zone, meet together, and negotiate and settle the issue. Now, theory is not always easy to implement in practice. But at the same time, I think political scientists as well as international relations experts, negotiators, if they delve into this subject in detail in a scientific manner and push this narrative through various communication media, there is bound to be some outcome and some result. As far as sustainable development is concerned, in Buddhism, the whole world, again, something which comes out of quantum physics and which is something which His Holiness always refers to, and Sri Gurumurti ji also mentioned about it. Every item, every element in this universe, living or inanimate, forms a single entity. This is what Buddhism teaches. It's all single entity. It's difficult to realize it at this moment. Like he mentioned, Gurumurti ji, that the VIF, the table, the chair, whatever you see around, it's a single entity. And any disturbance in any of these entities has an effect on you. But obviously you can't figure that out because it's a massive structure. So here, we humans play a greater role. We have a dominating role to play here because we are the wholly well-equipped individuals or elements of the society who know more than the others. So therefore, we have to be extremely mindful of how we take this balance between nature and mankind. This is again something which Buddha had spoken about, and he very nicely mentioned that the nature will give you back what you give to the nature. And mind you, he said that 2,600 years ago. There was no climate change at that time. There was nothing called carbon footprints. We never had these conferences in Davos to discuss, issues like this. But he said it then. And it has a relevance today, and it will have its relevance in future as well. Well, to wind up, since we're talking about communication, this world of communication is going to exist and is going to expand again, as Shri Guru Murthy ji said, that it's going to expand and expand and expand and expand. It is going to expand. You have 1.3 million kilometers of fiber optic cables, submarine cables laid across the world for communication. And these communication wires carry 97% of the internet traffic, which all of you handle. And it generates about $10 trillion of business. So ease of functioning and benefit to mankind is tremendous. And it is going to expand. But it comes with a baggage. It comes with a baggage of negative forces, negative elements, which we in the media domain need to deal with. In Buddhism, we were very concerned about the proliferation of information, proliferation of self-judged views and opinions by people on the concept of Dhamma, because the internet and the media space provides anybody any amount of conversation that he or she wants to indulge in, free for all. So we were worried that it will get corrupted, the teachings of the Buddha. But we were very lucky and fortunate that we had a gentleman from Malaysia who was visiting us last year in April 2023 when we had our Global Buddhist Summit. He's here in the audience, Mr. Fong from Malaysia. He went back hearing a lot of the Sangha leaders talking about modern day communication and its impact on Buddha's teachings. He went back and he worked on a AI chatbot, which he's named as Norbu. And over a period of 1 year, he's prepared this chatbot. It is loaded with all the teachings of the Buddha. He's consulted several monks, several Sangha heads, and built it up. The chatbot operates in several languages, from Tibetan to Sanskrit, to Hindi, to Chinese, to Bengali, to Malayali, and he's expanding the zone. The interesting thing is, he was telling me that a lot of youngsters who are not able to express their views to their parents or to their friends or to anyone in society are exchanging notes on their chatbot, trying to seek answers to the problems which they are facing. So this is a very big improvement, and we consider this as a positive development. And we hope that from this conference too, we will find some very positive outcome like we found in this particular case. Thank you very much. Namo Buddhaya.
Thank you, sir. That brings us to the end of the inaugural session. I first request our dignitaries on the dais, speakers and moderators to please proceed downstairs for a photograph session. Rest of the